And I think we're live. Very exciting. Um, just going to do the usual checking in to say if anyone can see and hear us, please let us know in the chat section, I think to the right-hand side of your screen. And then we can be confident that we're not just talking to ourselves. I see. Fantastic. Okay, starting to get a few messages in from people who are watching on LinkedIn and YouTube to say that we can be heard and seen, and that's great news. I guess before we go, please feel free to let us know where you are watching and listening from. I see someone from the Netherlands, but yeah, I'd love to know where we're reaching on this Wednesday afternoon. Hopefully a few of those will come in. I think there's a small lag, so if I'm a bit slow to get into those, let me know. London, Netherlands, fantastic. Very exciting. Okay, let's dive in. So first of all, hello and good afternoon to everyone. And welcome to today's very exciting webinar where we'll be discussing a topic that's very close to my heart, talking about professionals in AI and building careers and teams in the future of technology. Some of the locations coming in, I'm enjoying the the kind of spectrum of Hertfordshire all the way to Italy to New York, Kenya, rugby, a huge variety of locations. Very cool. So I'm Ailish. I am a solutions lead here at Unlikely AI. And Unlikely AI is an AI company that's building trustworthy AI solutions for enterprises in regulated and risk-averse industries. But previously, I was actually heading up the product function at Flexa. So a company very close to my heart, and I'm very excited to be back here today to be hosting this very topical and pertinent webinar, especially as we continue to sort of barrel through this AI revolution at a very rapid pace. So today we're going to address, I guess, like a sort of overarching, quite critical question. And that is around, as AI transforms sort of every industry at an unprecedented speed, how do we really build meaningful careers in this field or in this kind of time? And equally importantly, how do we ensure we're sort of growing alongside and thinking ahead of the evolution of AI so that we can allow it to enhance our capabilities rather than replace them? I'm joined by two exceptional leaders who are actively shaping the AI landscape. So Martin from Atombank and Patrick from Clock. I'll ask them to tell us a little bit more about themselves and what they do in a minute. But just to kind of talk a little bit more about what to expect today. So I guess together with sort of my perspective from Unlikely AI, we represent organizations who are kind of, at the forefront of AI innovation in different ways. But sort of building teams and technologies that will hopefully define the next decade and in a positive way. Over the next kind of 45 minutes, we will tackle some of the more controversial questions head on. So we'll cover things like, which roles will AI transform versus replace? What does AI literacy actually look like and mean? How do we use AI without becoming overly dependent? And what skills will really remain unique to us as humans in this AI era? We'll share some real experiences, not just kind of theory, but like practical insights from those building and working with AI every day. And we would really like to hear from any of you guys watching. So please do make good use of the question and chat facility on the right-hand side of your screen and leave any questions, any thoughts, and we will spend some time at the end of the webinar going through those. So let's kick off with a few introductions. Patrick, why don't you tell me a little bit about who you are, what Clock does, and a bit about how AI, I guess, is sort of impacting your work.
Sure. So my name's Patrick. I'm the CEO of Clock. we're a custom software development agency. So we're building all sorts of interesting technology across a number of different industries, from the publishing industry to entertainment, content creation, the auto industry. And as a technology company, obviously AI is having a huge impact in everything that we do. When it comes to talking about AI, I'm reluctant to be too melodramatic, but I'd almost say that it's kind of an existential exercise in trying to figure out who we are in the future. So it impacts what we do, how we do it, even who we are as a company moving forward.
Awesome. And Martin, what about you? Who are you? What do you do? What does Adam Bank kind of do? And what's the relationship, I guess, with AI in your work?
Hi, everybody. I'm Martin. So I guess a bit about Atom Bank to start with. So we're kind of the first of the neobanks, the first of the app-based banks. And we got our banking license in 2015. We're based in Durham in the northeast of England, soon to be in Newcastle. We're the first profitable neobank. And just in terms of size, we've got about 100,000 savings customers at the moment. We've got about 20,000 mortgages, I think. So my role is I'm leading a team of data scientists and AI engineers. It was really important for us to make that differentiation between the sort of traditional machine learning data science and statistical modeling, and actually just have a safe space for AI engineering, for the new flavor of AI. So in terms of like the traditional stuff, we'll build a lot of models for our internal stakeholders. We'll build things that tell them, you know, if you change our mortgage rate to this, you're going to get this many applications. So very traditional machine learning type activity. Then sort of moving into the generative AI space, we've probably been doing this for about 2 years now, starting off with some initial proof of concept pieces just to prove value and actually just get a bit of buy-in from the business. And we're using that now to good effect for a lot of mundane activity that people are having to do across the bank. So a lot of document reconciliation or extracting sentiment from text-based data.
Awesome. Sounds great. Two kind of different angles, but in the same sphere. So I've already given a brief introduction to me, but yeah, again, I'll talk a little bit about what we do at Unlikely AI and sort of why I think, you know, why I'm really excited to kind of be talking about these things today. So as I said, Unlikely AI are building AI solutions, particularly for enterprises in kind of regulated industries and enterprises who are trust averse or, you know, are making decisions or doing things that impact people's lives. And we specialize in sort of bridging the gap between the promise of AI and the reality of implementing it, by building applications that are accurate and unaffected by hallucinations, that are consistent and that are fully explainable. And this is quite different to most of the kind of AI solutions that are out there at the moment. And like in my work, I guess I'm very lucky to be surrounded by some of the kind of best and brightest minds in AI, and I get to learn from them every day, and also to be building some real world solutions for some of the biggest companies in the UK and globally, including Lloyds Bank and SBS. But I also have like a real passion, I suppose, for helping people who may feel a bit like overwhelmed or kind of out of touch with AI, to find sort of smart and seamless ways to help them be better at both work and life. So I'm really kind of excited to dig into this topic today. Right, let's kick off. So I'm going to go to you, Martin, first. I'd love to know, what do you think about what kind of tasks and roles AI will genuinely replace, and which ones is it more likely to enhance as we move forward in this era?
Yeah, so I think it's always difficult to say. I think I probably caveat every answer with it's difficult to say. But I would say that we've started our sort of automation journey by automating those tasks that people just don't want to do, and people shouldn't be doing them, right? we've got machines now that can do those things. They're sort of low value and low reward tasks. And at Atom, we want happy people working for the business. We need happy people, and drudgery does not make for happy people. So they're the tasks that when we approach parts of the business, they're genuinely happy that we're eliminating that part of the job for them. We want people solving hard problems as part of their day-to-day. We don't want them doing the mundane activity. So AI enhances my job every day. So we're actively using code assist technologies. We're actively using it to explore data and peer review and all the sort of steps of a technology product building pipeline. We're using AI in that. So yeah, there's kind of the stuff nobody wants to do, which we're quite happy to be rid of, and everything else is not going to be untouched by AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think there's, but do you think there's danger of kind of parts of people's work that they actually like being kind of being replaced or even by AI?
Is there a danger? Yes, I think that there's potential that will happen, but it's not the value adding part of their work. If we can get machines to do it now, it's not value add, and we have a responsibility to our customer and to our board, our shareholders, that we're going to do the best that we can with their money. Our savings customers deposit their money with us to be as efficient as possible with their money. And so it wouldn't be right for us to maintain parts of processes that just aren't serving anybody anymore. Ultimately, we want to offer the best savings rate to our customers, best mortgage rate to our customers. And the way that we can do that is by leveraging AI.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's interesting because I think we have the same conversations as you've kind of alluded to there, which is, whether you're a partner in an accountancy firm or at a law firm or whatever, like you have employees who've years and years of expertise, who are very skilled, have trained, and also cost a lot of money, right? And then they spend a lot of their time doing sort of mundane tasks, which aren't the best use of their skill set. And so I think there's a really interesting and kind of important angle there around like, how can we leverage AI to do less of the stuff or do more of the stuff that we don't want to do, and allow humans to kind of excel in the ways that they think. But I think there's this other side of the coin, which is people, especially around, I guess, more the creative side of AI. So the conversations around writing scripts and stories and creating art and that kind of thing, which is maybe there's an element that could kind of replace people's tasks, but there's also an element that those are the things that people do for joy and like want to do, and then we're kind of bringing machines in to do that. So I think there is something around like being careful, kind of like thinking about these things in advance. Patrick, I'd love to know, like, what do you think? Do you think there are like specific roles or types of things where AI is more likely to replace, and like specific elements that it's more likely or to enhance?
I think we have to delineate between. I mean, obviously, this is this is a Flexa live stream. We all place a lot of importance on employee well-being and making sure that we're supporting our staff through what is quite a dramatic period of change with AI and other things that are happening in the world. Now, generally, I think we will try and protect our employees, and the companies we work in will try and protect our employees against kind of the harsh reality of some of the things, some of the tasks that AI will replace. But I'm looking at some of the comments coming in, and people are very clearly worried about specific jobs, specific roles, specific tasks, and I don't want to be too negative, because you want to look at the positive side and the opportunistic side. However, the reality is that AI has to be taught and trained, and it predicts outcome. LLMs predicts outcomes based on kind of large amounts of data. So any task that's repetitive is at risk from AI. So a lot of the more supervised or managed roles that run on a script, certainly roles where you were inputting into a computer, the computer would give you an outcome, and you either listen to a customer's issue and then talk to them back. A lot of those repetitive, mechanized or deeply processed roles, they're obviously at risk. For my industry in particular, my worry is that some of those more junior and more supervised roles were the way that placements first got their feet under the door. It was the way to learn the ropes. And I think there are huge opportunities to harness AI for some of the more interesting work, strategic thinking, coming up with insights, finding ways to optimize productivity or create stuff. There's some amazing creative tools. But I think the question that bothers me is, how do we bridge the gap? Because there is the risk that there won't be as many opportunities for people at more junior levels doing the things that were quite mundane and they didn't necessarily like, but it taught them basically how an organization worked. And it's how they got in there and started to understand how it works. That's how they understand the dynamics and get to the point where they can do the more interesting stuff. So I don't have an answer to that, but that's kind of where a lot of our focus is at the moment. How do we keep our placement scheme going? How do we give those roles in a world where AI kind of automates a lot of the more mundane tasks?
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting point. It's actually, so we're building a sort of a tool to automate part of the audit process in accounting. And like exactly as you're saying, Patrick, one of the key, the people who do that are the most junior accountants, right? Like they spend the time on it. It is very mundane, very manual. It's therefore prone to a lot of errors. But it also helps them to learn as they go. And, then you qualify into the kind of higher grade work as you go through the qualifications. But I guess, so one of the interesting things that, we're trying to do in the conversations we're having is around how do you build in a better kind of training or educational element to that process? So, particularly in things, in these kind of industries, like the things that you're building, we can't just hand them over to AI, right? Like you have to have a human in the loop. You got to have that oversight. You got to have the review. So how can you kind of leverage that part of it to also have an educational element? Because if you think about it, like a lot of those tasks, yes, they do enable learning, but they're also probably not the most optimal way to learn. It's just like the task has to be done. And at the same time, you can kind of teach someone as you go. But like, is that the best way for an accountant, for example, to be trained up? So I think I don't know exactly what the answer is either, but I do think there's an element of like starting to think about, okay, we're going to replace some of these sort of more manual and mundane tasks, but how can we also bring people along for the ride? And we also now have, I guess, a bit of an opportunity to think about like, how can we make this a better experience then for the learning at the same time? I also think there's something interesting around like the kind of human interaction side of things, like that is never going to be as an important as in this kind of age of AI. Like it's always been important, soft skills and how you interact with others, but like that is something that AI can never replace, right? Like the human to human interaction. So I think there's an element of that forms a part of every job, and I guess to different degrees, and how can you kind of make sure that you are focusing on that, but also maybe leveraging AI to kind of assist in that side of things. So I think that's kind of an important thing to be aware of. And I guess like just kind of to move on from that a bit and take it into the next phase, but like, how do we think what is the difference, I suppose, between jobs being kind of replaced by AI and then transformed by AI? Because they're similar, but sort of not the same thing, where like we talk about replaced, it's a job that becomes sort of obsolete, and versus transformed, the job or the kind of area remains, but how it functions sort of changes dramatically. So Patrick, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
I think I think I'm a very simple person. Like, I'm not very technical really, and so I try and make things as simplistic as possible for myself more than anybody. And the way I see it, there's kind of three levels of AI integration within with any company, but in the ways that people use AI. So the first level is supplementing your existing tools with some kind of AI tool. So a good example is I've written an email. I haven't written it very well. I asked ChatGPT to rewrite it so it's written a bit better, or I ask it a question. So what I'm doing is I'm using it as an additional thing that helps me do my job. The next level is replacing an entire tool or skill set with AI. So I don't know, I used to create a lot of decks using photo library imagery, and I bring them into Photoshop and I mess around with them until they look the way I wanted them, especially conceptual images. I can do that in like 5-10 seconds in Midjourney now. So at that point, I've replaced an entire tool with an AI tool. And I think those are great. I think everybody should be harnessing AI in those ways. The scary bit is the third level, which is replacing an existing operator with an AI, an agentic AI solution, and that's where it's replacing people. So I think everybody, I believe that organizations have a responsibility to support their employees in really getting to grips with all of those tools that they can use to enhance their roles. The challenge with it is it's moving so fast that it is almost kind of like an evolving campus, constantly like asking people what they found. And there's some great emails and YouTubers out there that are constantly giving you all of the updates to all of the platforms and all the technology. But I think that's what's so challenging. This isn't a traditional way of learning. It's certainly not something that you're going to learn at a university, because things literally happen. I've seen emails that say things that happened this week, and there's about 20 different advances. So I think our job is to make sure that everyone's on top of it, looking for opportunities, looking ways to leverage it, and make sure that everybody is at those first two levels, so that they're owning AI and AI isn't owning them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you should mention the kind of university side of things. I saw a question pop up in the chat just around, like, how is this going to kind of impact university? And it's, not something that I know a huge amount of, but it's one of those things that, like, it's got to be considered. It's got to be sort of baked into the university process now. We will get to a little bit more talking about kind of the value of university degrees, in the space, or given the kind of rapid development of AI. But I do think there is something around how are we kind of baking in that learning as early as kind of school and university times, as well as obviously people already being in the workplace. And I think, Patrick, you mentioned a few different tools there. I think there is something around, like, the democratization of kind of skills, essentially, that AI allows. I saw someone mention again in the chat about people using AI to replace therapists and stuff, and obviously there's lots of the kind of things you could discuss relating to the problems of that. But the other side of it is, it means it opens up potentially therapy to people who otherwise wouldn't have access, and so you have this kind of friction between those two things. But I'd love to understand a little bit more about how you guys at Atom Bank, it's hard to say, Martin, are kind of, I guess, you've talked a bit about all the various things you're kind of implementing around making people's jobs easier and kind of automating and transforming things. Like, how are you thinking about that idea of, like, equipping people to be better able to use AI and sort of transform their work, being transformed versus made obsolete?
Yeah, so in terms of what we're doing at Atom, I think kind of the biggest thing we're doing is raising the awareness of AI. And it sounds a bit ridiculous, a bit redundant, because if you're not aware of AI, then you've been living under a rock, But actually, it's more the awareness of what AI can do for you within your job. I think everybody's very familiar with, it can help me rewrite an email, or it can write a Word document for me. But actually, when we sort of talk to people around the bank, it's sort of exposing them to, you know, well, this whole process that you run that takes hours out of your week. We can do that with AI now. And nobody's really fearful of that bit. I would say that, you know, there's always potential of people being fearful of this kind of, it is the next industrial revolution, isn't it? And it's happened before. We've had, you know, go back many years, you've had farmers working in the field, and then all of a sudden the industrial revolution happened, and they're not working in the field anymore. They're working in the factory. Well, great, you know, they're still gainfully employed members of society. They're still manual laborers in essence. So the retraining to go from field laborer to factory worker, not so difficult. I'd say that the issue this time around is that the roles that AI is going to most easily replace are actually the roles where people are not going to so easily transition into, you know, an AI engineering role. It's not going to happen. We need investment in the education system to get us there, where, you know, more people are coming out of universities with those skills already. Yeah, so I don't feel like I have a satisfying answer to that.
I mean, I don't think any of these questions are easy, because, you know, as we were chatting before we started, and Martin, you're saying, you know, like, things are just moving so fast, and we actually don't know where it's going and what's happening, and therefore it's very difficult to kind of have clarity on that. But I think things like this, and sort of, as you said, raising awareness, or, you know, talking to people and getting people thinking about it, I think really does help. And I think one of the other things is, like, you know, going back to, like, what are the skills that we have that can't be replaced, and how do we use AI to enhance those?
Yeah.
And one of my favorite examples is using kind of the voice chat on GPT or whatever, to do kind of like role playing. So, you know, before a big like conversation or a pitch or anything like that, I give it some context, and then kind of role play with it, and like, you know, that's about that human in-person delivery, and I've actually been able to kind of use the tool to enhance that. So it's kind of like an interesting way. I think there really does involve a bit of a sort of mindset shift. But as you said, like, if people are, you know, a bit overwhelmed by AI or feel a bit left behind, and that kind of thing, like, that feels a million miles off. So it's about helping people to figure out how they can leverage it and kind of use it to positively influence their work.
I would sorry.
Yeah. No, please.
You know, we want to be in a position where we can help our customer without going through our contact center, for example. You know, at the moment, customers are phoning us up and saying, "Can you make this change to our account?" Now, that's an opportunity for us to deal with the mundane parts of that. You know, the customer doesn't necessarily want to talk to us; they just want a thing to happen on their account. And then we have other customers who are going through financial hardship or bereavement, and they're the customers that we need to really focus on with our people in the contact center. Phone our contact center today, you'll get through to somebody in our Durham headquarters, and they will talk you through whatever it is that you're having an issue with. And I think that, if I was a gambling man, I would say that's still going to be the same in 5 years' time. We're still going to have a human there when it really matters.
Yeah, I think you're dead right. And I mean, I you know, not to get too deep into the banking side of things, but it's something that, you know, we're working on quite closely with Lloyds Bank at the moment. And I think it's interesting, because if you are a customer of a bank, which most of us are, you know, you do often have times of being like, why is it still in the kind of Middle Ages almost? It feels like you've got to read art, you know, like kind of frequently asked questions, or you've got to try and wait on the phone, and it's really difficult. And, you know, part of it is, like, there's a reason, because it's very heavily regulated, because your money sort of matters. And so it's that, yeah, like, how do you start to, again, leverage these tools so you're kind of improving the experience for people, and again, democratizing or making accessible more, you know, the conversations or the information that you need, while not losing the important kind of human touches. And I guess I you know, one of that kind of leads us on to the next question, which is around this idea of sort of balancing using AI without becoming overly dependent on it, or losing core skills. I wrote a piece last week around kind of arguing against this. There's been lots of studies that come out have showed like kind of cognitive decline, particularly in young people who are heavily reliant on AI, and they're sort of not thinking for themselves or whatever. And my argument was that I actually find that the quality of my work is really improving because of the way that I kind of use AI. But in saying that, I did have an experience yesterday where someone was asking me for something like, tell us an interesting fact about yourself. And like, that's such a hard thing to do. And I find my brain wanting to be like, ask chat. Unfortunately, as of yet, chat is not quite in my brain. But I do think that kind of represents this idea of like how kind of dependent we're becoming on for accessing information and stuff like that. So yeah, I'd love, Patrick, to hear your thoughts on how we can kind of balance the efficient and effective use of AI without becoming overly dependent on it.
I think it's a question of integrity, isn't it? It's like we all should take pride in the work we do. And if we end up just using AI to do that work, and we remove any skill or judgment or opinion or thought on our part, we're almost speeding up the process of making ourselves redundant and humans redundant in general. If basically we manage to do everything that we do just using an AI, then at that point we've kind of demonstrated that we're not needed anymore. So I think it's really important. But I think over and above that, we move into the area of kind of like AI ethics, and that's something that we're focused on at Clock at the moment, creating an AI ethical policy. I think that every company is going to need one very, very quickly, and there are several governing bodies that are working on guidelines as well. What's to say that I haven't created kind of a creatify version of myself and hooked it up to ChatGPT, and I'm currently taking a siesta, and you guys are just watching it is me, because if I'd done that, it would be a younger and less read version of myself. But who's to say? I surely have an obligation to disclose that I've done that. Surely I have an obligation to disclose to any client the work that's produced with AI. I think we have a moral responsibility to take responsibility for anything AI does on our behalf. We have a responsibility to employees to guarantee they won't be replaced by AI. We have a responsibility, I think, to tell our clients when we've saved money and pass some of those savings on to them, rather than just basically reap the benefits. I think integrity goes from the person all the way through to the company, to doing the right thing for your clients, to do the right thing for your clients' customers, and then doing the things for society and the planet as a whole. And I think that whole conversation, it's very difficult not to go down rabbit holes, isn't it? I think that it starts with a very simple question like, where do I draw the line myself? And then it becomes a very expansive conversation around where should we draw the line as human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing with this kind of conversation, is it gets philosophical fast. And that's because there are so many unknowns. But I guess, like, I think one of the challenges is, I think the integrity point is really important. But one of the challenges is we have like a lot of young people who have grown up knowing, like my niece now says, can you ask chat to make me 20 jokes, and like that's her life, that's her experience of the world. And how do we ensure that I guess kids and younger generations as well as us are able to still develop skills and kind of their own kind of experiences without sort of being overly dependent on AI. I don't know, Martin, what you think about that.
Yeah, so it makes me kind of think of what is a core skill. So if I think of my mother, when she left school at 16, she went to work in retail. And in the retail environment, a core skill at that time was to be good at mental arithmetic, because the tills predated computers, right? So would we need somebody to be coming out of, we still expect the core skill of literacy, numeracy, mental arithmetic coming out of school. Does anybody ever need it? Probably not. But I do think that the core skills are still always going to be fundamental. I think the way that I hire now is still based on a set of core skills around logical thinking, a mathematical mind. You've grown up with the language of mathematics and logic, and so that's always going to be relevant, whether the coding part of your job or the documentation part of your job is kind of overtaken by AI. I saw an interesting statistic of, I think it was from Google, something like 16% of a code developer's time is spent coding, which is quite shocking, really, because they've got so many other distractions in the day. And wouldn't it be nice if actually we enabled our developers in a constructive way, in a properly trained way, to leverage AI, with a whole load of caveats that, you're working in a regulated environment, you have to do things properly, but actually just gave them more time to focus on those things. So I don't think we should fear losing some of the fundamentals.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think there are definitely elements around kind of outsourcing for everything. If you never have to go through the pain of sitting down and writing essays, maybe you're going to struggle to kind of articulate yourself well via text. But then there's also the argument that perhaps we'll all just do everything via voice to AI anyway. So maybe it doesn't really matter. Again, it comes back to, can you just articulate yourself using words? But I think, I sort of mentioned a little while ago the idea of the kind of potential cognitive decline versus like the improvement in other skills and other things that we do. And I think one of the key elements of that is, like, we often talk about AI from the perspective of increasing productivity, but I think what we also need to think about is, like, how do we use AI to improve quality? And you do that as simply as you get an AI to review your work, and you iterate with it, and I think you can start to see improvements. But I think that lies in a slightly different. So you have the assistant AI who will do stuff for you that you don't want to do, and then you have the coach AI, right? And the way you use it is around, like, how do you help it to help you get a bit better at things? And I think that mindset does sort of help in that. I am conscious that we are getting hundreds of questions, which is really exciting. But what I would ask people watching to do is just, if you could, if you have any really pertinent questions, there's also a bit of chat going on, which again is great. But if you have any burning questions, I'd love if you could start banging them in, and we'll be getting to them quite soon. I guess before that, probably one of the biggest questions is around qualifications, so university degrees or other more kind of like technical qualifications. Like, do we think they're becoming less valuable when AI can perform any tasks, or also when AI can potentially help us to learn things that we maybe don't need to get a formal qualification for? So Patrick, love to hear your thoughts on that, as I know you felt that was going to be a really big and contentious issue.
It's tough. I mean, just in the past couple of weeks, 2 school leavers have asked me to go, sit down and have a cup of coffee with them and give them advice, career advice. And ultimately, the question always becomes, should I go to university? Is it worth it? Because university, higher education, further education, it's increasingly expensive, and it tends to leave you with a big hole in your pocket, which you assume will be filled by this job that will be waiting for you at the other end. And to some extent, education is about training you to do something that's been done before. You're expected to learn like a large canon of existing knowledge. That's exactly what AI does. And I think there's a massive issue at the moment with AI being used by students to pass their coursework. because AI can do the coursework. It already knows the answers to those questions. So I think I'd be wary of any course that you could ace using ChatGPT, because you're kind of demonstrating that career may be at risk. But at the same time, if you look at, I was at the Turing Institute's conference earlier in the year, there's an incredible array of amazing scientific, medical, technical advances based on AI tools, the way that it can recognize, record past data, and some incredible research is being done. So I think areas where research is being done, it's certainly being supported and accelerated by AI. And so roles in those research areas, I think, will become, if not continue to be valuable, they might increase in value. But I mean, ultimately, there's certain things that AI is not good at, right? You know, it has no passion, it has no enthusiasm, it's not good at forming opinions, like it doesn't have a vision. It's no good at contextual or critical thinking. It's not, conceptual creativity is something that it doesn't understand. Innovation is not its strong point. So these are ways that people that are passionate about stuff can use AI to harness those skills. I think if you're passionate, if you get excited about stuff, if you immerse yourself in that stuff, if you're willing to be flexible and adapt, I think the age of a career being there from start to finish, from the start of your career to the end of it, are probably gone. So you've got to be flexible and adapt and be interested in lots of different things. I think that you can then find your way, and on that path you can work out whether university is a useful investment, or whether you can just get down and dirty and start doing those things without the need for a formal education.
Yeah, definitely. I think those are really good points. I mean, there's definitely something around how universities and even, like, you know, more technical qualifications and things like that, you know, they play more of a role than just the learning. So I think it's important to kind of remember that, you know, there's an element of maturation and, you know, other experiences that come in that process, and even kind of facilitating, you know, helping people learn how to think for themselves. You know, like, there's a big gap between school and the workplace and, you know, how overprescribed things are in school versus then kind of like what you're, you know, supposed to be able to handle in the workplace. So I think there's still a lot of I think importance from that perspective, but I do think there is something around how I guess how universities and other kind of institutions think about the education and how you test it, because you're right, like, you know, you have access at your fingertips to infinite information. So, you know, just understanding whether that asking someone to write an essay on a topic is no longer sufficient way to ensure people are learning. And I've definitely heard a lot of kind of rhetoric around kind of building AI into the assessment process rather than just trying to defend against it. And I think that will be quite important. I definitely don't have the answers. I'd love to hear what you think, Martin. And I guess also, which is like slightly related, and one of the questions that popped up is, you know, around, you know, like, what are, like, our qualifications kind of important, and then, like, how do we, I guess, is that still important from a hiring perspective? Are we, you know, when we're thinking about hiring the kind of next generation of talent, like, how is that playing into I guess the interview process and that side of things?
It's still massively relevant to me. So when I'm hiring for a data scientist or an AI engineer, I need to know that the junior person that I'm hiring has that basic language of mathematics, logical thinking. Just want to talk to my personal experience a little bit for a moment. When I was 18, kind of questioned whether I wanted to go to university or not. I had a summer job that offered a placement to continue. Ultimately, I took the decision to go to university. I had no plans of doing a PhD, but I did a PhD. It took me around the world. I got to see exciting and interesting places. If you're seeing university as a stepping stone to a career, you should evaluate whether it's necessary anymore. But if you're seeing it as a stage of life to be enjoyed, to really get to grips with a subject, to really get passionate about what it is that you're doing, absolutely go to university.
Yeah, I think,
so
sorry, go ahead.
those skills, for me as an employer, those skills in particularly around mathematicians, physicists, all those sort of logical thinking areas, it's still incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I think you're dead right, and I love that kind of framing. I think we probably have, the pendulum swung a little bit too far the other side, where everyone just went to university. That's been the done thing, and it has just been a stepping stone for many people. And maybe that's, maybe this year that's a good thing about this kind of new era, is that like now people can make the decision around whether that's actually the right thing for their kind of life and personality versus just the thing that everyone does. So I love that framing. I think that's really, really valuable. I right on time. I'm dying to get into questions because Restream, which is the tech that we're using, has notified us that we've had over 100 questions in the chat. So I don't think we'll get through them all, but we'll hopefully try and dive into some that are a bit more. Maybe we can give people some sort of practical tips and stuff to go away with. So one of them, and I don't remember who this was from, unfortunately, but I did copy it because it's a great question. What I'd like to know, what are your top tips on how employers can help upskill in AI? Is it a top-down or a bottom-up approach, which is kind of more effective? And Patrick, I'll push that to you. Oh, it's there in the chat. That's brilliant. Bethany, thank you so much for your question.
I think the first stage is very, very basic. I think we've identified that there's kind of a growth curve for people to kind of embrace AI. There's kind of 4 stages. One, I think we can't underestimate the level of general ignorance there is about AI. Just we work in industries and we're passionate about these subjects, so we know a lot more than even if sometimes we feel as if we're like running to try and keep up. We know so much more than most people do. So there's kind of a first stage is kind of a general ignorance. You kind of heard about it, but you don't know that much about it. The second stage is when people first hear about AI. I've noticed that there's a lot of denial. It's not going to affect me. It can't do what I do. I don't think it's going to happen for a long time. Like that's what people tend to there's kind of a denial stage. Then when they realize the speed at which it's accelerating and it's growing and it's taking on roles that traditionally humans would have done, there's kind of a state of depression that people go through. The kind of, you become a nihilist for a while and think, oh, well, it's all over. But then people come out the other side and they see opportunity. They see that there are actually some really interesting advances that not only could it be our demise, it could actually save us too if we harness it the right way. And there's areas in which people can get excited. And I think the first job in upskilling people in AI is to take people through that curve as quickly as possible and get them to embrace it and get excited about it. And after then, as I said before, it is about taking everybody on a journey together, because we all have to learn together. It's not something where there's much in the way of a formal education in place yet, if ever. And so we all have to share knowledge as we go along. No one's an expert. Everybody is learning as they go along.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually did I did a workshop last week for a charity around how they could, because charities, they inherently have so much to do and very little resource with which to do it. And so we, looked at how they could be using AI to try and do more with less. And I started by talking about this idea that, look, like everyone, AI is so new, we're all beginners. Like no one is an expert, actually. There are people who are done a bit more work and understand a bit more, but this is new for everyone. So you're not too far behind. There's endless learning for everyone to do, and hopefully that kind of gives people a bit more confidence, because I think that does play a big part in it. Keen to jump into a few other questions, so I've copied a few over here. As we face a future where tasks will shift, some jobs will vanish and others emerge. What skills or traits should people be building now to stay relevant and ready for the jobs that we can't yet fully define? I'd love to jump to you, Martin, for that one.
Yep. So I think this kind of comes back to the core skills that I look for when hiring. So I've got a very biased view, but they are, the people who embrace sort of the language of mathematics and logic and reasoning. There's always going to be a place for those people, regardless of what the technology is that we're currently working with. We're just going through another technological revolution. Those people can adapt in the best way possible, and just not fear what's happening, but embrace it, and be part of the change. Be the person who is leveraging that change, so that you're the person who can do the automations, can help get rid of the stuff that nobody wants to do.
Yeah, I think that's super smart. I think it's Scott Galloway. He says it's probably not going to be AI who takes your job, but it might be someone who knows how to use AI. And I do think that's a kind of important point. And like, you don't have to start by replacing, all of a sudden, kind of implementing agentic AI tools to do all of your work. You can start very simply, and start to build a bit of confidence as you understand, how things can work. I mean, I think there's another question that's sort of closely related, asking around, like, people generally being advised to need and kind of upskill in AI. But it's sort of not clear in the capacity that one needs to kind of upskill in. And how does that look like for a marketer versus an accountant versus a data analyst? Like, what are the things that are different and that people need to look at? And I think the point is, like, there isn't a prescribed way. You become AI literate, and you become sort of leader by experimenting and playing around. And the reason for that is coming back to the last point, which is that this is a new field for everyone, and there are some marketers who have gone hell for leather with AI and are now becoming kind of leaders in using AI to get better at their job, and it's just because they got stuck in. And I think that's a thing which is probably kind of frustrating as a response, but ultimately I think that is the way to go about it. I mean, I think personally, for me, like, one kind of simple way to try and understand areas in your work where you can start to look for opportunities is to think about the manual and, like, the hard kind of frictionful tasks you have, and also the ones that are quite manual. And sort of, if you start to identify those, and then those are usually ones that are quite ripe for automation via AI. I wanted to kind of jump onto this question, I think, by Jessica. And she's asking for recommendations around good kind of foundational courses or learnings about AI. I know, Patrick, you mentioned like YouTubers and other kind of content creators who are, because one of the challenges is, right, like, how do you keep on top of all the changes? And, like, you might not be interested in listening to the latest, like, tech news weekly or whatever to kind of hear what's happening in the labs, but you want to know how the evolution in AI is impacting what you can do, and how you can kind of take advantage of that. So yeah, Patrick, love to hear your thoughts on that.
I wish I could remember the exact name of it. There is there's an email that I get every single week. I think it's called Everything Agentic, and it's a guy that also publishes videos as well. And he's really, really good because he tackles one subject in depth in a 5-minute read once a week. So it's kind of like a general overview of what's happening with AI, advances in AI. Whenever there's a big subject that's kind of meaty, he'll do a YouTube video on it, and his YouTube videos are really good. I'll find the information and we can post it on the chat. But I think there is kind of there's generalist and there's specialist tools. There's also an entire industry that is emerging for people that can put you on training courses. Some of them are really, really good. Some of them are a bit sketchy. So it's finding the right courses for your particular industry. But I think it's good to have that general overview of what's happening within the AI world and the AI industry as a whole. But then it's about doubling down on your particular area of expertise and your particular, if you're a creative, there's some great blogs and there's some great YouTubers that specialize in creative tools, whether you're creating videos or focused on imagery. Our creative team are just about to start a course on AI for UX design. and learning all of the tools that they can implement for that. But again, this is a rolling feast. This is a rolling feast, right? The point is to get in there and understand what the tools are, and then you've got to start following them and looking at how they evolve and adapt, and the added features and functionalities that come in over time. Because this isn't a train that you take one station. You've got to ride it all the way. And yeah, I would find some generalist information and keep a track of that, and then focus in your area and find out what's specifically happening in your area as well.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think like there's so many, that we can put our endless sort of social media addictions to use in that respect, and hopefully find some kind of useful information on that as you go. I wondered, Martin, did you have any particular kind of resources for people or anything related to that?
Yep, so there's medium.com or Toward Data Science. I find that those articles written by people in industry are particularly useful. I would say I was actually having difficulty with an AI concept, something called MCP, which is really boring. I won't bore anybody with the details. The way I got my head around that was TikTok. Somebody did a 60-second TikTok video of MCP, and I just got it. No amount of reading would have got me there. TikTok did. So look in creative places.
People making content about anything these days. It's quite valuable in that respect. Conscious we were in the last few minutes, and I thought this would be maybe a nice kind of question to finish on. So someone asked, and again, it was Vidya, I think, and they asked, what would your advice be for people who are super talented and looking for a job, but are stopped by the barriers of the AI ATS systems rejecting them? And I think that's an interesting one, relating to I guess the implementation of AI to a degree, and then how it's kind of negatively impacting people. So yeah, Martin, I know you've talked a bit about hiring, so curious on how we can kind of help people get ahead from the early application stage.
Yeah. So at Atom, we don't screen using technology, we screen using people. I can't promise that that'll stay true forever. There are hacks and ways around these technologies that you just have to leverage. You need to get seen. Once you put yourself in front of a human, that's when you'll really be able to shine. Make sure you're hitting all of the buzzwords of the moment. So, if you're looking for a data science job, you want to be listing Python packages that you've used, or in particular, talk to business value as well in your CV. Don't just list the technical skills you have, but say, I drove X% business value. That tends to work as well. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, I think you're dead right. Patrick, curious if you had anything to add into that.
I think we're still, at the end of the day, we're all still humans, right? And I think someone forgot to ask the humans whether they wanted any of this stuff. But human connection is really important, and being human, having faults is part of being human, and it's endearing, and it actually makes us better than AI in some cases. I think I've read a lot recently about people getting very, very despondent, getting caught up in those job processes, job application processes. I think if there's jobs that you really, really want and you're passionate about that subject area, rather than dedicate your time, and again, I can't promise it's ever going to work, but some of the anecdotal evidence that comes through is like quality rather than quantity, and get to know the people and get to know the decision makers, even if there isn't a job right there and then. Form a relationship with them, ask them questions, ask them to help you in their search. And humans want to connect with humans, and I think if you make the extra effort to send a cover note and not get ChatGPT to write your cover note for you, it makes all the difference, rather than being at the mercy of one of those AI HR recruiters.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. We were hiring for a role recently and had hundreds of applications, and we had an application question, and you could immediately spot which one had just been plugged into ChatGPT and thrown out. So, interestingly, I think in the hiring process, you now are looking. I find myself looking for things with, potential slight errors or things that didn't read so well. So you could be kind of sure that someone actually kind of pulled that out of their own brain. So there's also a kind of slightly strange twist on, I think, what's happening now. Um, Conscious that we are at time, I will say there has been, for a lot of those questions, been a lot of chat happening from the listeners and the watchers. So hopefully, some expertise in there, which has also covered some of the questions. There's definitely been some recommendations around people to follow and watch and courses and stuff like that. So that's awesome. But I just wanted to finish up by thanking you, Patrick, and you, Martin, for joining. Some really valuable and insightful topics and tips thrown in there. And thank you guys for joining in and watching and all of the questions and comments. It's been brilliant, and a topic I could definitely discuss for absolutely hours, but we'll park it there for now. But thank you guys so much, and have a great rest of your day.